and welcome to Prepare Like a Pro live chats. My name is Jack McLean. I created Prepare Like a Pro earlier this year. We are a strength and conditioning business focusing on improving athleticism for footballers, both male and female, based in Melbourne, but working with athletes all around the country. If you're interested in looking into our training programs or working with us one-on-one, head over to our website, preparelikeapro.com. Okay, Colby, I'm super excited for our guest tonight, Will Day, who's just joined us. So bear with me. I will go through his intro in a sec, but I'll just invite him, send the invitation. There you go, Will. For those that don't know Will, he is an Australian rules footballer. He plays for the Hawthorn Football Club. He played his junior days at the PHOS Camden Football Club. He moved to Glenelg for a year before moving to West Adelaide. In 2019, he played for the South Australia. There he is. G'day, Will.
Jack, how are you?
For joining us, mate.
Yeah, no worries.
I'll keep going through your intro and then we'll get cracking into it. We've got a few guests jumping on, which is good.
Yeah, easy.
But yeah, in 2019, so for Will's draft year, he played for South Australia in the Under-18s Championship, as well as playing 3 reserves games, and he went to Sacred Heart College. Will was drafted with Hawthorn's first round draft pick at number 13 in the 2019 draft. Will's AFL career was initially hampered due to COVID-19 pandemic, where there was no VFL seasons. The VFL season was cancelled, so there was scratch matches, which I'm sure Will explain a little bit on what that competition was like for the reserves for the boys. But he was lucky enough and earned to get into the team round 6, where he debuted for the Hawthorn Football Club against Collingwood at the Giants Stadium. So fantastic effort, and he didn't stop there. He went on to play 11 games for the Hawks and received a Rising Star nomination in round 16, and also was recognised as Hawthorn's best first-year player. So fantastic first year for Will. So thanks for jumping on board, mate. It's great to have your time and your knowledge around the game, as well as we might start from the very beginning. Where did you first fall in love with the game? How old were you? And then go into maybe what age did you recognise that this could be a career for you?
Yeah, well, started pretty young through the Oz kick, and I reckon it was probably then that I got the passion for footy. And just playing all through from there, I reckon it was close to that age that I probably wanted, and I knew that I wanted to do it for a living. So, yeah, I think I recognised it at a real young age. And, yeah, played most of my footy all the way through with that in the back of my mind.
Fantastic. So even in Auskick, you had a feeling that you'd want to be an AFL player?
Yeah, I think Mum remembers just me watching the footy one day on the TV and saying to her that that's what I want to do. So, yeah, I think from a root, it was definitely what I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome. And you were a Hawthorn supporter?
So Grandpa played for Hawks. So I always had a bit of a soft spot for them. But, no, I was actually a Gold Coast supporter coming through. So, yeah.
Gold Coast? Yeah. That's interesting. How'd you go with them?
They're pretty tough, but...
Yeah, fantastic. And who, you mentioned some family members there, Grandpa and Mum, who influenced you the most, or who are some people that have mentored you along the way?
Probably Dad, Grandpa and Mum, all in separate ways. I think Dad and Grandpa took a lot of interest and they invested a lot in my footy, and I think the footy side of things, they were what really got me here today. Just little things like practicing my left foot at a real young age, which is probably why it is like it is today. And then Mum's probably more off-field things, just as a person from what I've become. She's been a big influence. And yeah, and then more footy side of things, a few coaches have been really good. Like even just playing at Sacred Heart, I think that footy culture there really exposed me to the emotion in footy, and there was a real good feeling playing for them. So I reckon that helped along the way. And then my coach for West Adelaide as well, Paul Streetfield, just his professionalism, it really showed me the professional side of footy. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, you mentioned Sacred Heart. You actually got a question came through my Instagram story. How did you find your experience at the Sacred Hearts, especially first 18s? Jaden Visiting. I don't know if he's an Adelaide guy. Do you know Jaden?
Yeah, I think he's a few years younger at school. But yeah, I love Sacred Heart, and just so much feeling and emotion because you're playing with all your mates. And yeah, it's just everyone's invested and everyone wants to win. So I think that's why everyone loves playing it. And I think a lot of people say that it's the best footy they've played, and just because they've enjoyed it so much. And yeah, I really loved it.
Fantastic. Awesome. And yeah, that's a good question from Jaden. If any of you guys watching that have tuned in, feel free to send through any footy related questions to Will by hitting the question mark button. We'll move on to the next part. So that's leading up into a little bit your journey and your story leading into football. What about your draft year, the 2019 year? Do you want to go into a little bit about the challenges that you faced there and the joys as well? So what was the year like for you?
Yeah, draft year was the first year that I'd been sort of looked at for a state football side. So I hadn't played state all the way through, and 2019 was my first year, which was quite fortunate. And yeah, I was really training there, just hoping to sort of play at least one game in the champs. And yeah, I ended up playing all of them and ended up that. So yeah.
Awesome, mate. And the year before, so where were you playing most of your footy? And what was the year like before? You obviously had a good year if you got picked into the state side for the first time.
Yep. So that was the year I made the move over to West Adelaide. So played a few games there as an underager, and then also was playing just mainly Sacred Heart, and that was when I was year 11. So we had pretty solid year for Sacred Heart, and West, we'd usually been around the bottom, but we sort of made the finals and had a pretty decent run at it in the finals as well. So yeah.
And what made you move to West Adelaide?
Yeah, it was just a bit of lack of opportunity at Glenelg, being on the lighter side in terms of my frame. I think, yeah, a few of the bigger bodies were being played ahead of me. And
yep.
Yeah, so I just thought if I'm going to have a crack at trying to get drafted, it was probably the best move. And especially having Grandpa over at West Adelaide, life member over there, really that decision. So yeah, that's why the move was made, and I reckon if I didn't, I probably wouldn't be here today.
Awesome, mate. Yeah, so a little bit of a gut feel as well as family support to make that call.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Awesome. It takes a fair bit of courage, especially going into those last couple of years leading into the draft to make those decisions. So I think that's good advice for the younger guys listening to listen to their gut and their family support to make those decisions. For the 2020 season, obviously it was fairly different year to a standard AFL. How did you find the COVID hub and the whole experience of 2020, what it brought?
Yeah, well, being my first season, I probably didn't know what to expect. So it was probably a good thing in that aspect going into the hubs. Like, I didn't really have any expectation of the season anyway. And I'd moved out of South Australia, so the fact that we were moving a bit more didn't really faze me. So I enjoyed it. Like, we were around the boys all the time, and it probably helped everyone get a bit closer. Yeah, so I really enjoyed the experience, and the fact that I got to play a few games helped as well.
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Yeah, for a first year, what a year.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
I'll move into the Q&A, guys, so send through your questions. So this one here from a James Cousins fan. Who was the toughest AFL player you've faced so far in the AFL so far?
Probably the most daunting moment was probably first game when Scott Penderbury was resting up forward, and I went and stood him, and it was a bit surreal. That was probably just capped off the night. Like, just sit there and realise I'm playing on one of the greatest to play the game. That was pretty exciting, but I reckon toughest was probably Liam Ryan from West Coast. Just the way he leaps and the way he gets around the ground. He's pretty dangerous all the time, and he's just hard to stand at all times in the game. So probably him.
Yeah. What did you find was the biggest change physically going from the scratch matches or even previous games in the state league games to then the AFL?
Yeah, I think the biggest change was just in the AFL. Every different place I stood, they'd all have their separate strength and they'd use it. And so if I'm playing someone who's a bit shorter but a bit stronger, they'll be able to use their body in a different way to someone who's taller. And I think it's just the constant adjustment with whoever you're playing on was the biggest change. Whereas when you're playing sample, everyone's sort of the same age in under 18, so you can get away with playing the same way the whole game. But I think AFL probably more mental, that you had to adjust the way you defended, especially being a defender. You were always having to keep your head in the game.
Yeah, awesome. Nice, mate. From Garage. Hey, Will, how have you handled your first year? So good. I reckon you should have gone first, right? So it's a bit of a pump up. You did have a really fantastic year. Did you surprise yourself? Did you feel like that was what you were expecting for this year? How have you taken this year in reflection at the end of the year now?
As I got to the club, I had the confidence in myself that I probably could do what I did this year, but I was still being realistic with my body size. Like, I knew there was still a bit of work to be done, and I was just getting myself ready. And if I don't play as many games as I'd like, it's all part of the process. So I always knew I could inside. So when I got my first game, I was just really trying to take the opportunity, and I knew that I could be out there. So just try to go with it, and yeah, it ended up working in the end. So yeah, that's probably how I handled it this year.
Yeah, nice, mate. This one's more Hawthorn based. How did you find the culture of the club from Bailey?
Yeah, I think the fact that from the outside world, everyone talks about Hawthorn's culture going in. I could tell straight away why it's so spoken so highly. I think the biggest thing is probably the relationships with all the coaches and all the assistant coaches, and all the staff around the club. Everyone's so close with each other. There's no barrier between anyone at all. So I think that really helps. And just little things like a couple of the older boys taking me under their wing made it a whole lot easier. And yeah, definitely no egos at the club as well. So everyone's there for the same reasons, and there's no judgment based on age, or no one's seen as different as any other player. So yeah, really enjoyed the culture this year.
Yeah, fantastic. Really good questions, guys. Keep them coming through. This one, how do you analyse your opponents, from Omar?
Yeah, so every week in our meetings, we'll have you going off into your lines, and they'll put up the players that you'll probably be coming across, and you'll probably be given 4 names, and then you'll go off and watch a bit of vision, and you don't only look at their highlights, but you also just look at the general play and just the way they run, some of their running patterns as well. So especially as a defender, you're always going to have to look at their attributes and their weaknesses as well. And then, yeah, their physical aspects as well, just always thinking about how you're going to play them, because rarely do you ever play 2 opponents the exact same way. So, yeah, there's definitely a lot of vision and a lot of looking into the players.
Yeah. And would your preparation, like the non-physical preparation, has that changed a lot since now you're an AFL player?
Yeah, I think so. I think, like I said before, playing sample footy, you can probably get away with not preparing mentally as much as you need to for AFL. And I think as the games went on, I probably learned that a whole lot more. And I think, especially the night before games, I was taking that a lot more seriously in terms of what I'm putting in my body, but also thinking about the game as well, getting my right spot. And yeah, I think you'd rather do all the thinking earlier as opposed to getting to game day and before the game working yourself up too much. So
yeah, for sure. So this one's from Bailey. Do you feel like your weight puts you at a disadvantage, and how do you navigate that?
I think overall the fact that I'm trying to put on weight probably suggests that I am at a little bit of a disadvantage at the moment, but I think the way I play, I play well enough to sort of, well, not well enough, but I just change the way I play to counter that factor out. So if I'm playing on a guy that's a lot bigger than me, I'll just try not to initiate too much contact and use some of my other strengths to overcome that. So I don't think it's too much of a disadvantage, but I definitely, do want to put on a bit more weight so I can, when I am put in situations that I need it, like the strength, I'd be able to do it. So, yeah.
So it's well answered, mate. How did you come to that mindset where you do focus on a lot of your strengths and showcase that on the game? Like, you're fun to watch, the way you take on the game, and you've done it in your first year. So what would be, I reckon there'd be a lot of young footballers watching at the moment that, whether it be coaches or probably fitness staff too, we're probably guilty of it. What do you recommend to those kids watching? What should you focus on? How do you top up your strengths and your weaknesses? How do you sort of go about it?
Yeah. I think coming through, especially Dad was always reminding me, just don't be afraid to make a mistake. And I think probably at junior level, there's probably a bit too much pressure from coaches that are trying to win games as opposed to the development of the players. So I think just going for it and really showcasing your strengths, as you said, and also trying your weaknesses as well, even if it doesn't work. Yeah, just not being afraid of making mistakes, because even when you are playing safe, you're still going to make mistakes anyway. So I think coming through, just really trying to utilise my weapons and take risks, especially in juniors where it's probably not as a bigger risk as it is at AFL level. I think that's really held me in good stead. And now playing, last year, I think it was instinctive to do some of those things because I had done it all the way through. Yeah,
fantastic. Thank you. Well answered, mate. That's really good advice, I think, for not just footballers, but life in general. How did you instantly make friends with people at the club? I assume that's how Cameron's asking that one. It does look like from afar that you belong at the club, mate, and how have you made friends at Hawthorn Football Club?
Yeah, I think getting to the club, I was more focused on getting the respect of the others as opposed to making friends straight away, because I think they probably go hand in hand. So it really helped staying at Luke Bruce and Jack Gunston's place for a week each. From then, had pretty good relationships with them, and they sort of had me under their wing for the rest of the year, which really helped with some off-field stuff and just knowing how to go about it as well. Then from then, us first year boys all had a really good connection, and we sort of came together and have really good relationships with them now. And I think across the whole team, I've tried to make an effort to be as friendly with as many as possible. So I've made some pretty good relationships, and I think it really helps when you're playing together, when you're playing with sort of people you respect and they respect you. It helps a lot.
Absolutely. This one here from Omar. What was the best moment to happen in your career?
In my career, I'll go off this year. Probably that Carlton game. It was, still early on, but the first win I'd had, and also kicked that goal as well for my first goal. And I think we were 32 points down in the first quarter, and we came together and came over the top of them, and for that to be my first win, I was over the moon and couldn't have been happier. So that's probably my favourite so far.
Yeah, I think someone actually, it's hard to find the question now, but someone asked a question on how did you feel after that goal, so that's a good flow on that question, but I think you've just answered there. So that's 2 questions answered in one. Any advice on young juniors trying to make it to the league?
Probably as sort of going on from what I said before, working on your weaknesses is a big one, and I really value being able to be skillful on both sides of your body. That's something that I probably isn't as drilled into these days, and I think people get away with just having one side through juniors. What really helped me was just being able to use both sides of my body, and it just helps in traffic and things like that. So that's probably the biggest one. And then also not only just working on your weaknesses, but working on your strengths to make them even better as well. They're probably 2 things I'd say. Yep,
great advice. This one from Noah. Did it feel at all daunting stepping up into the big league emotionally and stress-wise? So from a mindset point of view, how was the week of when you knew you were going to debut? Did you find out early in the week of round 6? Did you find out late? Take us through that week.
Yeah, found out reasonably late, only the day before the game. I'd been named as an emergency a bit earlier in the week, but it was an extended squad, so I didn't really know if I was in or not. And then, the morning of the captain's run, we had a team meeting and got the all clear to play. And I think it did settle in until that night, laying in bed, because we had training, did a few media things as well. So, I didn't really have too much time to think about it. And I think it sort of set in that night, which probably wasn't the best, because I tried to get to sleep and have a good rest before my first game. But I was just real excited, but a bit nervous as well, obviously. And I think just wanting to take my opportunity was probably where the nerves were coming from, and something that I cared about so much. The fact that it was all happening the next day, and I found out earlier that day, it was pretty stressful. But then the next day, I was able to contain it pretty well and keep my mind off it. And just think whatever happens, happens. As long as I just give it a crack and don't leave anything behind, it should all work out. Which we didn't get the win, but I feel like I played my role.
Yeah, fantastic. Awesome. This is a good flow on, because we'll start to wrap it up now, Will. Thanks for answering all those questions. This last question here is on a little bit about next year, which is good, because we'll wrap it up and talk about what you're excited about for 2021. But you don't know who the draftees are yet. I think that's on December 9th. But what advice will you give those guys, even though this year was a little bit different? What advice would you give the new draft picks?
Probably getting into the club. It's probably easy to stay in the shell a bit, but I'll probably say, just come in and be yourself, especially at Hawthorn. There's a lot of different personalities, and we all accept that. So that's probably my first bit of advice, and that also translates to out at training. It'll probably be don't try and go into your shell out there either. Just still train like you usually would, play like you do, and don't try and take the safe option. Just still try and show off what you can do and train well.
Yep, fantastic. That'll be good advice for those guys when they do get drafted to the club. Thanks for jumping on, Will, and answering everyone's questions. You had a great year in 2020, and it was a good opportunity for you to explain your story leading up to 2020, but then also how you found this year and what's worked for you as well, not only getting drafted, but also playing at the highest level. What are you excited about for next year? What's sort of your focus at this time of the year being off season, and what are you looking forward to for next year?
Yeah, I think the most exciting part about next year is just having a bit of routine, come back into it, and yeah, especially having my first year in all the hubs. I think it'll be good to just be in somewhere I'm familiar with and yeah, just be able to do all the right things to prepare the best I can for each game. Probably most excited as well about playing at the MCG, and hopefully we can get a few crowds out, because I think the biggest crowd I've played in front of is only about 15,000. So looking forward to some of the big games at the MCG as well.
Sure.
Yeah, this time in the off season, it's just, yeah, especially in the gym, just not so much trying to chuck on all the weight at once, but more just trying to become a stronger athlete, and which can correlate into my running as well. And yeah, so just trying to become stronger.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thanks again, mate. And thanks for everyone for sending through your questions as well. They were really, really good questions. And yeah, thanks again, Will, for jumping on, mate.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.